Today we're looking at some of my man Skipntosh's favorite books. Welcome back to Comics Are Dope. I'm BJ Kicks, and as this video goes live, today is December 23rd. Today is my man Skipntosh's birthday. It would have been his 38th birthday. If you're not familiar, Skipntosh was a friend of mine. He was a moderator on this channel, as well as an admin or a moderator in our Discord group. And, you know, at the earlier part of this year, we started the Comics Are Dope podcast together. And, you know, the way I've described him is like my big brother in comics. He was someone who I talked to fairly regularly. And, you know, we chopped it up, of course, about comic books, but then also about life, about faith, about family, about music. We talked about a lot of things. And, you know, unfortunately, he passed earlier this year after a pretty short battle with cancer. And I couldn't let today pass without honoring him in some way, without shouting him out in some way. And there's a few different approaches I was going to take to this video. At one point, I just kind of scoured through all of his comments on my channel and in the Discord, like looking for the books he recommended the most. I went back and listened to our podcast episodes, trying to find little hidden gems, and things to recommend. But I figured the best way to honor, someone who recommends books, right? And obviously that's not all Skip did, right? But my point is, as opposed to just shouting out a bunch of books that I haven't read, I thought it would be nice to tell you guys about books that Skip recommended that I did read and how they impacted me. And of course, you'll leave here with a few recommendations of things that I have and haven't read, and a few ways to, you know, keep Skip's legacy going. Now, this is part of the 25 Days of Comics. It's brought to you by Organic Price Books. Several of the books that I talk about, you'll be able to order from them. So use the first link in the description down below. Well, it'll be the second link this time around, but go to OPB to check out these graphic novels. And thanks you guys for being a great partner on the channel. Now, like I said, I think the best way to go about this is first to tell you guys about some books that Skip recommended to me that really had a pretty profound impact. And the first one that I want to talk about is funny, right? So when I first got into comics, you guys know, my first comic was this. It's House of X, Powers of 10, written by Jonathan Hickman, art by Pepe Larraz and R.B. Silva. When I was picking this book up, I would, of course, read my single issue, but a part of my whole routine with this was to read the book and then immediately go on YouTube and search to make sure that I understood every little Easter egg and stuff, because this was my first X-Men comic, but this comic has a lot of deep cuts and, you know, pays a lot of fan service to the past and stuff like that. So I would watch these reviews on this other channel, and little did I know, I didn't know this at the time, but one of the people who was involved in those breakdowns was Skipntosh. So it's funny because Skip was there from the very beginning of my comic journey, unbeknownst to each other. So that's crazy, right? So House of X, Powers of 10, by one of Skip's favorite writers in Jonathan Hickman, the book that got me into comics, and the first book that Skip held my hand and walked me through, even from a distance, which is crazy. Now, another book that Skip recommended to me, and what's funny is like our relationship was funny because I am absolutely a big two superhero capes and tights guy. That's generally my bag. I don't veer out of that very often at all. But when I do, it's because of the recommendations of either the community or just great friends or whatever, right? So you guys have heard me tell this story before. But one of the first experiences I had doing like a sort of book club thing was with my man Skipntosh and my man Bunkmaster B, both moderators in the Dope Fiends on Discord. Skip hated that name, but the Dope Fiends. And that was Four Kids Walk into a Bank. So Four Kids Walk into a Bank, Tyler Boss, Matthew Rosenberg. I never remember what Mauer's first name is. Let's look it up. Thomas Mauer on letters. But this is about a heist. I've recommended this fairly recently on the channel, but it is what it sounds like. Four kids trying to rob a bank. And this is like great if you're a fan of like The Goonies, The Sandlot, Juno, like those books with like the young, wisecracking leads that are kids but get into ridiculously adult situations. This book is for you if you're a fan of that type of stuff. It's only 4 issues long. They read really well. They read really quickly. And this is a very heartwarming and touching story, which is always a plus. So another book that I read specifically on Skip's recommendation was this. This is Reckless. It's a book by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, one of Skip's favorite creative teams. Like they got to a point where no matter what they would write or draw, Skip was picking it up. And whether he liked it more than the last thing or not, he's like, yo, you guys get an A for effort, for trying. I love it. Keep it up. But Reckless is about this guy, Ethan Reckless. And it's like your typical like pulp detective, like private eye type stuff with there's usually like a femme fatale in there, some action, some drama. And it's just fun stuff, right? There's 5 volumes. I don't remember which volume was Skip's favorite, but volume 1 is probably my favorite so far out of the 3 that I've read. I've read Reckless, I've read Friend of the Devil, and Destroy All Monsters. This one's my favorite still, but it's always a fun, just like, I typically read them like Saturday mornings when I got nothing else to do, if I got nothing else to do. But I really enjoy the Reckless books. And this is just, again, one of those examples of like the detective, the crime books that Skip liked a lot. I think if there's one thing that Skip liked, it was a dense, meaty, chewable book. I don't know. That's such a weird way to describe a book, but Skip liked books that went beyond the surface. In fact, we did a whole podcast episode, I think it's episode 2, where we both talked about like what makes a good comic for us. And Skip kind of got into comics, or not into comics, but one of the things that Skip was really into was Hickman's whole Marvel run. Avengers, Fantastic Four, Secret Wars, and all that, right? Really smart comic book writing. And by the time that was over, he was kind of like jaded with superhero books. And so he found himself reading a lot more indies and finding just great storytelling there. And so that was our relationship. I'm always reading big 2 books. And he's like, yo, check out this little indie series over here. You'll like it. Just give it the time of day. So another book that he told me to read that I ended up checking out, I don't have here because I checked it out digitally, is Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man, an anthology of sorts written by W. Maxwell Prince with art by Martin Morazzo. And that book basically is a horror book, and I don't do horror books, but it's not like a horror book for the sake of being grotesque or scary, but it really is a book analyzing, some of the best and worst of the human condition. And like, there's an issue about a guy jumping out of a building, right? And like, what are the thoughts that he has on the way down? There's one about a guy whose daughter is dying or is dead. Or no, the girl's friend died. And like, there's dealing with like, death and grief. And there's a one about like a couple who are drug addicts. Like the mistake I made with reading Ice Cream Man was that I binge read it. I think it's a series best read month to month. But now they're like 30 issues in. I think they're more than 30 issues in. There's the Sunday editions where you get these big deluxe hardcovers collecting all of it. And while I completely understood why Skip liked it, I was like, this book's kind of depressing. And so I didn't keep it going. Although now I do kind of want to just buy it just to have it and revisit it from time to time. But definitely not something I would read every day of the week or anything like that. I will say, for as much as it wasn't my general taste, it was some really, really good and poignant comic book writing. Really liked what I read, even though it wasn't like a Kicks book, as Bunk would say. So Ice Cream Man is another recommendation that Skip gave to me, and I'm passing on to you. Speaking of books that I read that I don't have with me, one of the creators that Skip liked a whole lot was Daniel Warren Johnson. When I started reading Do a Powerbomb late last year, and as it completed early this year, Skip was like, yeah, man, I told you about D-Dubs. He was trying to get me to read a few Daniel Warren Johnson titles. The one he kept trying to like beat into my head was Murder Falcon. Over the course of like several months, he was like, yo, you should read Murder Falcon. It's really good. And I never did. And then when Skip got his diagnosis, well, honestly, it was right before he got his diagnosis. I asked him if there's anything he needed because he wasn't feeling well or whatever. And he was like, yeah, nah, just read Murder Falcon. And so I read Murder Falcon. And Murder Falcon, I did a whole review of it. I'll put it up there if I remember to put it up there. I tend to forget. So Murder Falcon, about this dude named Jake who used to front a band who was like, by all accounts, like the best guitar player ever. But, you know, in recent years has found himself down on his luck, like just, you know, estranged from his friend group for one reason or another. And over the course of the series, basically, he's faced with a situation where he's got to play guitar and kind of reclaim his love for music in order to save the world. And as he does, we learn about what had him so down and what made him turn his back on music, to begin with. And, it's a heartbreaking book, without spoiling it. It's crazy that Skip recommended that book to me. In hindsight, I don't know. I can't talk about that book without spoiling it. So Murder Falcon, which probably should have been the last book I recommended, right? But there are a few other books that Skip loved that, you know, I didn't read, right? So, for example, Rodney Barnes has a book called Philadelphia. Rodney Barnes with Jason Sean Alexander. That book is still ongoing about vampires in Philadelphia. This dude has like daddy issues. His dad was never like really approving. He's going to like be the best cop in the world, solve this murder that his dad couldn't solve. And turns out what he uncovers is this whole vampire underworld. And who's a vampire? The man's dad is a vampire. I promise all I've spoiled for you is issue 1 so far. But Philadelphia was good, but you know, I tend to stay away from sexual themes in comic books, and vampire books tend to be full of sexual themes. And so I dropped Philadelphia after volume 1. Well, a book that spun out of Philadelphia was Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog. And while I picked up issue 1 and quickly determined, hey, this isn't for me, it's got demons and the occult and all that, Skip ate this book up every month that it came out. He was like, yeah, man, that Nita Hawes is dope. And so, hey, if you're a fan of horror books, if you're a fan of like, you know, darker thriller mystery type books, you'll probably enjoy this as much as he did. I wanted to shout it out just because, again, this video, I'm bringing out books that I have, but I know he loved and that, you know, he would recommend if he were here. Speaking of that, another thing that Skip and I had in common was that we bought pretty much all the Bad Idea books. Now, the difference is he actually read all the Bad Idea books, and I just kind of collected them because I had pre-ordered them all. But going back through Skip's recommendations in our Discord, the book that he recommended, or that was most highly recommended by Skip, is this, Monster Kill Squad. Monster Kill Squad by Christos Gage with art by Tomas Giarello. What's funny is I was able to partner with Bad Idea to promote the Kickstarter for Save Now, which as of this recording, I think ends today. So I'll leave a link just in case it's still live. But Save Now was a book that was first previewed in Hank Howard Pizza Detective #1. It was this $1 book that was available for one day only. But it's drawn by the same dude, Tomas Giarello. And I was really excited about the backup story, Save Now. And Skip was as well. There's another book called Pirate Queen from Bad Idea. And he was like, yo, like, I don't even really care if you like Pirate Queen, but you got to buy it because it ties into that same backup story. And, you know, now we get the full story and Skip's not here to enjoy it. But anyway, Monster Kill Squad was a Bad Idea book that Skip recommended a lot. So I wanted to pass that on to you guys. Again, man, it's hard doing this because so many of these books that Skip recommended, I never got around to, and I wish we could like have these conversations. And now I get to like read them and fully understanding like, you know, his taste and his proclivities. I can say, oh, that's why he liked this book. But we don't get to have those talks anymore. So it's bittersweet. But I think that's the end of the books that I actually read, that he recommended. Now, I do want to get into some other books that I know he loved. Like I said, I told you guys, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips were one of Skip's favorite creative teams. He kept trying to get me to read the Criminal franchise. I still have not cracked it open, although I have all 4 hardcover volumes. And, that's a thing I did often. He would pick on me for. But Criminal by Brubaker and Phillips. Check it out if you're into crime comics, that noir, that gritty detective stuff, like, you know, kind of seedy underworld type stuff. It's the reason I haven't cracked open Criminal, to be quite honest. But he loved it, and he was always trying to get me to, hey, you should read Criminal. You should do your read through of Criminal now. But anyway, maybe next year. One thing that Skip and I did have in common is we both were fans of Black Panther, and we both strongly disliked the John Ridley run of Black Panther. He was excited about Eve Ewing getting the title, and I was too. And you know, hey, the Eve Ewing run is good so far through 6 issues. I wish he was around to see him, but Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates was the last run of Black Panther that Skip really enjoyed. The art by Brian Stelfreeze. In fact, Skip ended up sending me a couple of issues signed by Stelfreeze and like this really cool like art book that was only available at cons. We really bonded over our love for this character and wanting to see Black Panther T'Challa return to like his former glory. So I'm excited to read through this because it came highly recommended. Black Panther by Coates. I'm actually trying to do all of my Black Panther read through in order, like series order, because, you know, there's less Black Panther out there than there is Claremont's X-Men. So that's why I haven't gotten to this yet, but we'll see. And then, of course, obviously there's something I'm saving for last. So one of Skip's favorite writers is Jonathan Hickman, but his favorite comic artist is Nick Dragotta. And they work together on a couple of things. You got some Hickman and Dragotta pairings in Hickman's Fantastic Four. Skip loved this run so much so that he did like an in-depth breakdown of the entire run in a series on his YouTube channel that I will link down below. So check out his read-through or walkthrough of Hickman's Fantastic Four. He even did interviews with Dragotta talking about it, which is dope. But Skip's favorite comic series of all time, he told me on several occasions, was this. It's East of West. It's written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Nick Dragotta. It's like a sci-fi Western set in a dystopian America, according to the synopsis online. So this is a book that also is 3 oversized hardcover volumes, divided into 3 years. I've not read a single one yet. In fact, this one hasn't even been cracked open. But I got it on Comixology, so I'll probably go ahead and read it. These hardcovers are like wildly out of print. Hickman says they won't be reprinted again. Similarly, Brubaker said Criminal wouldn't be reprinted again, which is why I have those as well. But this is Skip's favorite series of all time. So if you're into indie, if you're into sci-fi, if you're into Western, you should probably check it out. But you best believe there's like deep themes. There's multi-layers to the storytelling. Some other things that Skip recommended to me. Rom V's Detective Comics. I've read part of Ram V's Detective Comics. It's still ongoing as we speak. But he loved Ram V. He loved The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which is a series I never read. But he was eating up Ram V's Detective Comics at the time when I was hoping that Zdarsky's Batman would be good. And he's like, yeah, I'm jumping off of that. But Detective Comics is dope. And he wasn't wrong. Again, Skip loved those books that you could just kind of chew on for a long time, that had a bunch of different themes, a bunch of different layers going on that were deeper than just, the pages and panels. He really demanded more out of comic book storytelling, which was really cool. So that's pretty much the end of my line when it comes to recommendations from Skip. That's all I can really speak intelligently on. I will shout out this last series. This is the last book that I ended up getting because of Skip. But this is Fuse, written by Anthony Johnston with art by Justin Greenwood. Justin Greenwood I met at Heroes Con this past summer, just shortly before Skip's passing. But the only reason I knew who he was because Skip had him come to our podcast for an interview on one of the first episodes of Comics Are Dope. I think it's episode 3, the Justin Greenwood interview. Can't remember. But anyway, the Fuse, I love the art in this. This is also like a detective, sort of police book, but it's set in space. So that's really cool. But anyway, so that's the end of my recommendations line. There are a lot of people here who read more indies than I do. I know Bunkmaster B is watching this, so Bunk, leave some recommendations in the comments below. I know there are several books that you guys read together, that you guys argued about. And hey, man, Skip was not just a member of the Comics Are Dope community. Skip was a member of every comic community ever. If you had a YouTube channel, chances are Skip was watching it and talking about comics in the comments down below all of your videos. So what I would love to do as a tribute to him is you guys share the stories that, you love, that he recommended, that he loved. Share those so that everybody can get, the gift of, great comic book storytelling this Christmas. So to Skip's family, to his girls, I know it's a rough time. I know for a fact it's rougher on you guys than it is on any of us here. But, yeah, man, our prayers are with you, in this season. And, man, thanks again for everything. If there's anything any of us can do for you, you know how to find me. So one last thing I wanted to do. So Skip wasn't just into comics. He was into art. He was into music, and he made music, as well. And so one of the last big projects he was able to complete, he was actually in a group called the Audio Video Department, with producer Roving Jules, an electronic music outfit. And they did an EP called It All Felt So Real. It's available on Spotify now. You can listen to it if you want. But after Skip passed, they actually they teamed up with an indie label to put out a limited vinyl release. And the proceeds from that vinyl of It All Felt So Real will actually go to Skip's family to help cover his medical bills and funeral expenses that he left behind. And it's a really beautiful album. There's hardly any words on it. There's a vocalist on the last track, which is cool. But there's also a song that's exclusive to the vinyl on this. So the only way to hear that 6th track is to buy this vinyl. Like I said, the run is limited. So there are less than 100, if I'm not mistaken, left. So go ahead and grab that if you want it. Like I said, all the proceeds after, production costs are going to Skip's mom to help pay for, like I said, the funeral, his medical expenses that he kind of racked up in those last few months. So you want to hear some great music, you want a nice keepsake, something to remember him by, or you just want to help out the cause, go ahead and grab that vinyl. And, that's going to do it for me. I'm rambling, so I'm going to go. But you guys, man, stay safe, man. Love on each other. Stay awesome. And read something dope today. That's what Skip would do. Peace.